Hope we're doing great. Hope we're doing great. Double B. Good morning, Cyber Hornets. Indeed, Nick. What's up, my man? Good day, fam. Night where you are, Nick. We know. Australia. We love it there. Not really. Good morning, fam. Matt. Ben. Good morning, team. It is pump day. It is pump day. We love pump day. T-Dog Yo-Yo. Let's do some Bitcoin. What's up, my man, Tommy? Good morning. What a beautiful morning to do Bitcoin. We're going to be doing a big-time Bitcoin this morning. Let's all make it a great day. Indeed, Thomas. I think it's going to be a great day. P-Man, it is Moscow time. We've got another good Moscow time. They keep getting better. Good morning, y'all. Good morning, Joseph. Hope you're doing great. Good morning. What time is it? It's breakup time. We got a really good Moscow time coming to you. You're going to love it. Greetings from Florida, where Bitcoin is the future of money, and we're at the forefront. Indeed, King Mansa Musa. We love it there. Good morning, Bitcoiners. B for victory. Habib, good morning, everyone. Jevy, what's up, my man? Bud, love seeing you here, bud. Love seeing you here. All right, let's just acknowledge we got a mega sunrise. I could even move my thing a bit, and you'll see the sun spray in like that. See, we got all kinds of sun. And Bitcoin's running. So we're good, guys. Let's have some coffee and talk about what's new. All right. So, Moscow time today. They keep getting good. I don't know what to say. I just have to look for them, and they're there. So, everyone talking about Russell Brand, right? Well, of course, the newspapers have a lot to say about it. Russell Brand's Wonderland, the online soapbox where the star pushes his free speech. Amid the relentless conspiracy theorizing on the comedian's YouTube and Rumble video channels, there have been fleeting pauses for self-reflection. All right, so thank you, Daniel. All right, thank you. This one's pretty great, right? I don't know if you heard about long COVID, all right? Well, it turns out they didn't do too much science in determining what long COVID really was, and it turns out that it looks like long COVID risks are distorted by flawed research, a study found. The risk of contracting long COVID may have been exaggerated due to flawed research leading to unnecessarily high levels of anxiety about suffering from it, a new study has suggested. This one's pretty crazy. This is part of our theme for the day. We're going to be talking about home, right? We're going to be talking about homes and home. It turns out that this fella, 95-year-old veteran, was kicked out of his nursing home to make way for migrant housing, lawmakers say. Now, it's just lawmakers saying it, so it's probably fake. Right? How many things do lawmakers say on either side are real? We'll see about this 95-year-old guy. Speaking of lying politicians in the news, can you imagine that there's an article in the Wall Street Journal today? You know, so the Wall Street Journal, some people say, because it's owned by Rupert Murdoch and Fox, and Murdoch retired this week, I guess, and some people say it's anti-liberal establishment, right? But other people say it's pretty big uniparty outfit, right? So they have an actual headline today. The GOP can't afford to indulge in populism. Mike Pence retweeted it. And the subtitle is Conservatives want to unite the country while politicians like Trump seek only to stroke grievance. Oh no. Thank you for the note, Wall Street Journal. I shall probably never read your shit rag again. Okay? And this one is great. So Chase came out yesterday. Chase in the UK came out and said, we're not doing crypto anymore. If you try and buy a cryptocurrency with our exchange, we'll deny it. And they had some reasons, right? What were their reasons? Well, they said that crypto is a scam. Maybe they're right. It's fraud, right? They said all that stuff. They obviously don't differentiate between Bitcoin here, right? It's just a crypto thing. And so they say that they've made the decision because fraudsters are increasingly using crypto assets to steal large sums of money from people. Declining these payments is one of the ways we're helping to keep you and your money safe, right? So in other news, so that's Chase, right? So that's Chase. So that's what they had to say yesterday about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. But they also had another thing yesterday, right, where they settled the Jeffrey Epstein trafficking suit in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So Chase, right, you can't buy Bitcoin. That's a crime, right? but giving money to old Jeffrey Epstein, no problem. And now they owe 75. We've been following this case. This is the famous one where the attorney general was fired over the Christmas holidays. I still have a lot of questions about that. If you remember, Joe Biden took an impromptu Christmas vacation to St. Croix of the U.S. Virgin Islands, and he arrives, and suddenly they had just initiated a case against against Chase for the Jeffrey Epstein payments they made to people and hiding stuff and being his banker. And they said on the U.S. Virgin Islands that, they suffered because of all of this and they wanted money back. Well, the attorney general was fired during Joe Biden's Christmas visit, right? So she was fired. It looks like they went through with it, but here it is, right? JP Morgan Chase said it will pay $75 million to settle a lawsuit by the U.S. Virgin Islands alleging that the American bank facilitated and benefited from the sex trafficking of young women by its longtime customer, Jeffrey Epstein. So isn't that funny, right? Isn't that funny that on the same day that they say, no crypto bad. Oh, by the way, here's our $75 million fine. It's not the crime. That's just the fine payment, right? Or not a fine, I guess, the lawsuit settlement. But so strange coincidence that they're on the same days, right? It's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence. But there was another coincidence yesterday that might not be just a coincidence, and it was really funny, and it's part of our theme today, which is home is where the hard money is, right? So some people say home is where the heart is, right? Maybe. But we have two stories here that underline this question of home. So it turns out that Joe Biden actually listed his home address for one of his bribe payments from China. And we found out yesterday. So Breitbart has the story. Joel Pollack says here, money sent by wire from China to Hunter Biden were found to have listed Joe Biden's actual address during a time when he is already running for president, and while Hunter Biden was living in California, bribing a presidential candidate. So it was a money wire that was sent there, right? Obviously. We have a few people sort of breaking it down. We've got Mario. Well, I'll get to the Mario one in a second. Mario Nawfal, of course, had a story about the connected story to this. This is the strange coincidence, right? So this all has to do with Hunter Biden or Joe Biden's home. James Comer was the one who found it by subpoenaing the wires. So he says here, I just subpoenaed and obtained 2 bank wires revealing Hunter Biden received payments originating from Beijing in 2019 when Joe Biden was running for president. Joe Biden's Delaware home is listed as the beneficiary address for both money wires from China. Comer reveals wires from China have Joe Biden's Wilmington home as the beneficiary address, right? So he goes into why this is a big deal. Now, simultaneous to this, at the same time, the same day, right? Questions about the home, the payments, the bribes. It turns out that a court in the United States has decided that Trump's Mar-a-Lago home, okay, now I'll explain why it's related. So Trump, of course, was in New York. Then he had to move his actual domicile to Florida for a million reasons, he said. So he went and did that. Now, I don't know if you know about Mar-a-Lago. So Mar-a-Lago, even preceding the Trump acquisition and all these things, it was actually founded by the Post cereal maker, Post. So they make a lot of breakfast cereals in America and Canada. So it was made 100 and something years ago. And it was actually, when it was created, was called the Winter White House. And the intention was for it to actually be the Winter White House, that you would migrate from the Washington, D.C. White House to a Winter White House, which was different and all that stuff. It never worked out that way. In the end, Trump bought it and actually ended up using it as the Winter White House while he was president. But that was one sort of ambition that people have had. So it turns out, this is from Kaneko the Great, a couple of people are talking about it this morning, but a judge ruled that Trump inflated his property values, right? So he said that Mar-a-Lago was worth a lot, but the judge yesterday says that Mar-a-Lago, which is 20 acres on the ocean, right? It's 20 acres on the ocean. It's a huge mansion, right? The judge came out and said that it was worth between $18 and $20 million, okay? So Kaneko Great breaks it down. He says, to put this into perspective, neighboring homes on 0.2 acres are listed for 18 to 40 million. He's got 20 acres, right? So he's saying Mar-a-Lago, the 20-acre property in the middle, is worth less than worth less despite being 20 to 70 times bigger. Eric Trump says the real estate circles in Florida are laughing at this foolishness. Donald Trump Jr., if Mar-a-Lago is worth 18 million, I'll take 10, please. So Mario Nawfal actually breaks it down. The Quartz magazine. Let me just read you before I tell you what. Let me just tell you before I tell you what Mario Nawfal said. Let me just read you the headlines on Quartz today. If you want to know what real dog shit news is, right? Look at Quartz. It's one of the worst. And I don't think they're a Mockingbird asset thing. I think they're just low IQ. I don't think they're like engaged in all of this stuff. I don't think they're like Facebook, which has like 50 former spies working for it in its censorship bureau. I think they're just low IQ. That's just me. The first one, the Hollywood strike is over, right? And this one, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission and 17 states are suing Amazon. I didn't hear much about that, but here we go. Here's the here's the thing on Trump. They only put about 5 or 6 stories in their newsletter a day, but this one's funny. A New York court ruled that Donald Trump committed fraud while building his real estate business. A judge found that the former president lied about the size of his net worth to banks and insurers for years. Did they mention anything about how blatant this judge case is, right? Or this judge decree of $18 million Mar-a-Lago is? No. The next one is JP Morgan is settling over its ties to late financier and sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, right? But just no context, right? It's just $75 million to the Virgin Islands and $55 million is earmarked for local charities, right? And then finally, the EU said X is the social network most responsible for fake news. That's what's in Quartz today, right? European Commission, someone named Vera Jourova, right? From who knows where, said Elon Musk. So Vera Jourova, who's got accents and things on her name that I can't even read. I don't know how to pronounce her stupid name from Slovenia or Slovakia or another country nobody knows where it is on a map, is telling Elon Musk that he needs to get ahead. He needs to get ahead of the lies and disinformation, right? Before Russia does real damage. Of course, Russia. As Glenn Greenwald likes to remind us, everything in the world for these people comes down to Russia, all the time, right? And she mentions here, because before Russia does real damage in the upcoming election seasons, and I guess she's talking about her home country, Slovakia. Slovakia, all right? Where's Slovakia? I know because of hockey, I know where it is, but you know, there's like 15 people there. Beautiful place, mountains and all that other stuff, right? And so Poland, which we're going to be talking about again later. So Poland. So here's what Mario Nawfal says about the house, right? And Mar-a-Lago and what's going on. Judge rules Trump defrauded banks and insurers. In the biggest blow yet, a judge ruled Trump committed fraud for years as he built his real estate empire. Judge Arthur Engeron found that Trump and his company deceived banks, insurers, and others by massively overvaluing his assets and exaggerating his net worth on paperwork used in making deals and securing financing. So he found that Trump repeatedly lied about their wealth and annual financial statements, reaping rewards such as favorable loan terms and lower insurance premiums. States that those tactics crossed the line, rejecting Trump's contention that a disclaimer on the financial statements absolved him of any wrongdoing. He ordered that Trump's business licenses be rescinded as punishment, making it difficult or impossible for them to do business in New York. He also said he would continue to have an independent monitor oversee Trump's operations. And in a phase of the case known as a summary judgment, resolves the key claim in the lawsuit, saying that rent-regulated apartments in the defendant's world, right? That anyway, he goes into some mind-reading thing on Trump and understands what Trump meant about everything. But again, the whole thing is based on Mar-a-Lago being worth $18 million. Many people say it's worth $1 billion, right? So 18 million, not quite where a lot of people say it's worth. So you got that. But what I find funny is that this is on the same day, right? This is on the same day. It's Biden's house address being used for bribes and Trump's house being used in a case that proves the U.S. justice system is as corrupt as you think it is. Right? So imagine bribery at the home address, maybe, right? Missing the valuation of your home to defraud people when you're the legal system that is actually completely exaggerating the numbers in order to more or less defraud Trump of his legal rights, right? It's kind of the same thing, but in reverse. So isn't it funny that the simulation is winking, that it's literally about the homes of the two people running for president? Now, I don't think there's any way that we can now deny that we're headed to a 2024 election, which is really about each candidate threatening to imprison the other, right? That's what it is now. It's just two guys, two septuagenarian, well, one septuagenarian, one octogenarian, arguing about who has to go to jail for something to do with money in their house. Right? That's where we're at. It's almost the same thing in reverse. Maria Bartiromo, if you don't know her husband's a big Bitcoiner, by the way. She hosts one of those Fox shows. She'll probably be fired soon because she's been engaging in conspiracy talk for a while now. So she comes and says, now we know why the New York judge decided to move on Trump today. It's all so obvious and all so disgusting, right? So could you imagine that it's the same thing again? How many times have we predicted that whenever Joe Biden gets into trouble, there's always a Trump situation waiting in the wings? They're always timed. It always seems to be that they happen at the exact same time, right? It's either aliens, right? If it's Hunter Biden, it seems like it's aliens every time, right? And it happened again. We predicted this summer, the next time Hunter got into trouble, it was going to be aliens, right? Well, the last time he was in the news is when the Mexicans brought out the little alien papier-mâché things, right? So every single time. And now here again, the minute Joe Biden gets into legal trouble, there's the ancillary one. Joe Biden also had his own box hoax scam thing happen to him yesterday, right? You know, that everyone talking about the part of Mar-a-Lago where the boxes were. This is a separate Mar-a-Lago story. Right? This is not the same one. This is the fifth legal trouble, the fifth time Trump's been in legal trouble this year. The other Mar-a-Lago related one was the box hoax. Now, again, there's got to be some kind of a quiz or a prize if you can keep up with all this stuff, because we're on it every single day, and it's not easy for me to keep them all separate, right? So the Mar-a-Lago boxes hoax is I think impeachment number 3, 2, or not impeachment. What do they call it? Like when he can't run again or whatever, right? So it's like number 2 or 3 in the indictments. I don't remember. But remember, Biden has his own boxes hoax. It was in the garage with the car, right? So here it is. A federal probe into President Biden's handling of classified documents prior to becoming president has grown into a sprawling investigation, right? This is according to ABC. The federal probe into President Biden's handling of classified documents prior to becoming president has grown into a sprawling investigation. Several sources estimated that as many as 100 witnesses have been interviewed, right? What's going to come of that? Probably nothing, right? Probably. Are they going to indict him, right? We'll see. We'll see. But that we're dealing with these two House questions at the same time, to me makes it and we're also dealing with the corruption of the legal system simultaneous to that, right? We're dealing with the corruption of the legal system simultaneous to that. And by seeing it in terms of like corrupt legal system, by seeing it in terms of, preferential treatment for one presidential candidate over the other, that in this case, some people say that because Joe Biden got into this legal trouble yesterday, of course, you have to camouflage it with Trump getting legal trouble so that both stories can't penetrate the mind at one time. It's just one audience who's dying for bad news about Biden will hear the Biden news. One audience dying for bad news about Trump will hear the Trump bad news. And no one will really catch on, right? We'll just stay angry and saying, the walls are closing in, right? Because that's the thing, too. You got to remember, as much as we laughed about the fake news in the Russia collusion, Mueller, Russia time, and we kept making the joke, the walls are closing in, because every single headline was the walls are closing in on Trump. We tend to do the same about Biden and Hunter, right? The walls are closing in, right? Are they? Well, a lot of this stuff is so scammy that it's impossible to predict in the short term anyway what's going on. But in the long term, I think we get a little more insight, right? I think we can get a little more insight. You get Elon Musk, who's being improperly treated by the legal system at the same time, right? Bringing up all of the trouble that the Biden administration is giving him, right? He's got all these government probes and how many of these things are going on. So that sort of tips the scale a little bit into seeing the system as completely corrupted, right? You had in the news yesterday as well, they've been trying to bring the folks like Clapper and Brennan around because, of course, Trump talked about General Milley, whatever his name is of the day, and talked about how that was treason, right? So if you remember what happened with Milley, while Trump was still president, the general has admitted that he opened back channels with China in order to avoid something. Trump is crazy, right? That's always the story. But remember, Trump is the commander in chief. So generals don't just have the authority to go ahead and do this kind of stuff unless they've got some kind of fallback plan, or unless they're involved in intrigue, right? Unless they're involved in intrigue and they know they've got their bases covered, because Trump said anyone who would have done what Milley did in his time in a system that's supposed to work as intended, it would be treason, and the penalty for treason is space drop, right? So now yesterday, they're starting to talk about of other people if Trump wins and how many there's going to be. And so you had Clapper and Milley, they were on CNN, and you have the journalists doing the old Jake Tapper tell from when he's being a fraud Mockingbird asset. He'll twist his head and start being sympathetic like this. What are you going to do about the criminals? Right. So you had this girl, I don't know her name. She's a journalist, and you see her in the screenshots talking with Clapper. Right. So she's there with James Clapper, and she's like, but are you afraid Trump's going to kill you if he gets in power? Right. And she's doing this. Imagine doing this face on TV, like the concerned. I'm so sorry. Imagine I spoke to you that way. Well, we're going to have to get Bitcoin. It's not nice that the fiat people don't be nice to us, right? So she's pulling this move like a child, right? That's how my children try to manipulate me. And so she gets Clapper on there and asks Clapper if in the same way that General Milley worries that if Trump is reelected, he's going to jail his enemies. And Clapper says there are probably a lot of people that are potentially on such a list. It's a concern for many of us, right? And Mike Davis says, he's on my list. Milley's on my list, right? Indict, detain, all these others. We've got a list, right? We've got the best list going, which is the space drop list. And there's no way Clapper's not on the space drop list. There's no way. He's got to be on the space drop list. Anyone who signed the 50 known liars for the Hunter Biden thing, someone on that list has to get dropped. And I say Clapper, he's as good as anyone, right? Milley should be dropped too, right? They're on the list. But really, Trump's got to start pumping up his list. He's got to start leaning into it. He can't just be like, oh, I don't have a list, right? No, they're out. He is already being charged for his thing with the electors in Georgia. If he's guilty, right? I mean, he's got to start talking about production values and special effects and hype it up. No one can hype up a space drop as well as Trump could. Nobody, right? If Trump really leans into space dropping and just puts it out there, like, yeah, we're going to do this. The enemies, if I am elected, are going to be in trouble. But we're going to go one step further, right? We're going to make it fun. We're going to make this entertaining. We're going to make it so you never forget, right? And Elon is going to be riding the rockets. Like he'll gas them up himself, right? He's going to gas up the thing and say, yo, ready to go. And boom, we're going to do it, right? So Clapper on the list, Milley on the list. What's funny is you get this Claire McCaskill, right? And she's saying it's one of the worst things Trump has ever said, right? That he's going to go and that that he suggested that that Millie deserves execution, right? And she's there. Where's the GOP that they say they care about the military? The idea that Trump would get away with saying that without being lambasted by every Republican official is stunning to me. She thinks you need to talk about it more. I think you need to talk about it more too, but not like shocked and stunned by it. You just have to accept this has to happen. It has to, right? We got to clean things up. We gotta never forget. You can't be like Canada applauding Nazis, right? And saying they never forgot, right? Well, you forgot when something like that happened. Now, the funny thing here, and this is related to, well, we'll get to the Poland question in a second, right? We'll get to the Poland question in a second. But going back to all of these names, Clapper and everybody, so here's where things are headed, and here's why home is where the hard money is, and why U.S. federalism will have a role to play, right? This is with Trump, it's a Florida, New York thing. But yesterday, we had the Secretary of State, which is going to become a really important role going forward. The secretaries of states for each U.S. state. So, there's the Secretary of State for the country, which is Blinken now, but every individual U.S. state has their own Secretary of State. And the powers of a Secretary of State are actually very interesting, right? They have like citizenship power for the states, not the birth certificate scam citizenship. Real American citizenship can actually be given by a state Secretary of State, according to the laws, right? According to the laws. I've looked into it. So the state secretaries of state have a considerable amount of power. And there's this one in West Virginia who's written a letter to the House Committee on Appropriations and anyone who's in charge of the Department of Homeland Security and budgets, and has said, until integrity is restored, do not fund the Department of Homeland Security. Dear Speaker McCarthy and Chairwoman Granger, perhaps the strongest tool the U.S. Constitution gives the House of Representatives is the power of the purse. For the sake of national government integrity, I call on you to refuse funding the Department of Homeland Security as long as Mayorkas, Brennan, Clapper, and others who falsely claimed in writing that the contents of the Hunter Biden laptop were likely Russian disinformation. So saying here that more or less we shouldn't even be involved with the Department of Homeland Security under the conditions we have now with people like Clapper and Brennan and Mayorkas. Remember, we talked about that, the new expert panel that's going to decide what is true at the border and what isn't, right? So they're going to psyop the border in the same way we've all seen many times information laundering goes down, right? You get the experts and the analysts, and the analysts say, this has created X amount of crime. We all have to stop to save people, right? We've seen the same trick used 100 million times. What they're saying here is don't even start to fall for it, right? Don't fund these people. Don't even let them create the smoke screens. And we're starting to see the emergence of this, both knowledge of how the information laundering systems work, as well as, let's call it, a re-inspired sense of state capacity and state sovereignty. And that alone is enough to really change what's going on in America. The states themselves waking up to their powers, like Texas is doing regularly with the border, and now like West Virginia is also talking about this kind of thing, right? So you're starting to get this idea of states' rights bubbling up to the supranational or federal level in the case of the United States. And it looks a lot like what we've also seen in Poland, right? So Poland has come out and said they're not going to participate in the Lampedusa migrants from Africa thing. One of the leaders of Poland was in the European Union the other day saying, we've trained enough doctors. I don't need your bullshit reason. We get doctors from this country and all these other people from other countries. We have them all in our country. We don't need these migrants. We don't want them. We will take zero. So went to the European Union, said that, really proud of it all. But they do want one guy. They want one guy, right? Who does Poland want in their country, right? Who do they want? They're asking for someone. They're saying none of the Lampedusa migrants, none of those ones, right? But there is someone they want in their country. And of course, it is the Nazi that Canada cheered on the other day. So they're asking now for this fella to be extradited to Poland, where they want to, I guess, give him shit for what he did. And we're here for that, right? So should be a pretty interesting case. So it looks like Charlie Kirk brings it to us. He says, Poland is now seeking extradition of Hunka, the 98-year-old Nazi who fought Russia and received a standing ovation from the Canadian Parliament. And they want him to stand trial for his war crimes, right? So this is after he was called a Canadian hero. Absolute humiliation for Canada is what Charlie Kirk is saying. So imagine you get this power of the purse, the Homeland Security question. You have Poland, which is not going to be subjected to EU bullshit on this. They're going to do their own thing, right? So they want one in. They want none of the other ones. They want the war criminal back. They don't want anyone from Lampedusa around, right? At the same time, you've got the United States, where it turns out that with all of the sanctuary city manipulations or antics that Texas is throwing at, for example, New York, continuing to bus migrants to sanctuary cities outside, we're starting to get a sense of the bill in America, in New York City, right? New York City's finally starting to get a sense of how much all of this costs. And it turns out it's something like $1 billion in the next few years, right? So we had someone who's actually looked into it and said, Colin Rugg, New York City is gearing up to pay over $1 billion on just hotels for illegal immigrants, right? So this is the same guy in the 90 whatever year old veteran who had to leave his home for migrants. Now we're seeing that the sanctuary city bill for New York City alone is going to be $1 billion for just hotels, right? New York City Mayor Eric Adams estimates the total cost of the migrant crisis to be $12 billion over the next 3 years. And he says, we are passing our breaking point with more than 57,000 individuals in our care on an average night. It amounts to $10 million a day, $300 million a month, and $3.6 billion a year. And then, of course, 2 days ago, there was a altercation on Staten Island between the locals and the migrants. The police ended up protecting the migrants and arresting the locals who were protesting. Okay. Now I don't know how violent it was. Maybe there was a reason you had to do it that way. But what most people on the ground said is the police were not there to do anything but what ended up happening. Locals who were protesting arrested, migrants who were there, no problems. So the upshot of it is you get all of these places, right, that are now thinking about the purse a lot more, right? We've got financial troubles all across America. You've got Matt Gaetz, who is leading this whole power of the purse shutdown of individual departments like the Department of Homeland Security, and like whatever else is funding the censorship industrial complex. And he comes out and he says, we are devaluing American money so rapidly that in America today, you can't even bribe Democrat senators with cash alone. You need to bring gold bars just to get the job done because the bribes don't hold any value. So he's coming out and saying the whole thing with Bob Menendez, which I think was another scam. And I think Menendez is crooked as a question mark. There's no doubt about it. But the story the media went with, gold bars in his house, they're just there, and like money in his pockets, sounds like he's not playing ball anymore. Sounds like he was having a bit of cold feet. Sounds like he was hearing footsteps coming after the Biden administration and was saying, I'm probably better off causing trouble with the Biden administration now than I am about continuing on with the crimes that they're asking me to do, because I don't think Menendez wants to get dropped from space, right? I think he's okay with just jail, right? I think he's starting to do the cost benefit of which crime would you rather get caught with, right? This little bit of money laundering as a politician, not bad, right? Not bad. Being involved in the kind of organized crime stuff that the Bidens are, maybe worse. So we'll see. But all of that comes into this next story. And I think it's the biggest story of the day, and it's going to be our last story. I've got to go do spaces after this, so I don't have as much time today. And of course, it's this story that we found out now that Fauci was actually overtly brought in to the national security apparatus with the CIA in order to create an information laundering narrative, which could be sold at the time of COVID, right? So it turns out, Mike Benn says it, the CIA news just dropping. And well, what's the CIA news? That's his reaction to it. Here's Kyle Becker. A blockbuster report from the House's COVID subcommittee finds that Dr. Fauci was smuggled into CIA headquarters to give a cover story on the COVID-19 origins. Ben says right away, he'll post an interview we had from a few weeks ago where he talks about all the different CIA angles and the COVID cover-up. He sees the CIA fingerprints from 7 different scandal areas is where he first wrote about it, and said that he's Ben Stradamus, right? Because he's able to predict this stuff because he's basically followed the money and knows what's going on. So from what we've seen, right, now that we understand that the Global Engagement Center, right, that's the Meta information laundering group. Those are the expert analysts and disinformation gurus that they always hire, that always work for former national security people, right? Remember, Meta has 160 employees from the U.S. intelligence community, former employees, 14 former CIA agents, 26 former FBI agents, National Security, Department of Homeland State, all these folks, right? And of course, this is how the what these folks ended up monitoring are media content providers, private companies. They fit into the system where Mike Benz is arguing they're going to put middleware and compliance technology instead because the humans aren't capable of keeping up anymore. But from what we've seen, Americans now understanding how this information laundering system works better than ever, and now I think anyway capable of suppressing some of these payments so that you can't run the censorship machine as efficiently as you once did, right? So I think the case of Fauci now and the involvement in the narrative spin around COVID, we have enough parts now to actually have the conversation. We're not just susceptible to gaslighting as we might have been before. We're not as susceptible to counter arguments because we have the whole story. There's too many blind spots before that no one could know. Too many assumptions, too many narrative assumptions that were made. But 2023, 2024 is not the same as 2020. We're way better off. You had Sarah Huckabee Sanders yesterday, another state banning forever mask mandates, any of that stuff. So you're going to have U.S. states like West Virginia, like Florida, like Texas, that simply will not go along any longer with the corruption in Washington, D.C. And I think this perfect contrast we had today of Trump's house clearly being caught up in legal manipulation, bringing further disrepute on the legal system in America, contrasted with Biden's situation with his own house. And, you know, in the end, it should just be an apples to apples comparison of the legal systems. But because the media is so useless, you don't get that, right? You're not even going to get close to that. Which means I think Americans are starting to understand more and more Trump's line from the very beginning that the enemy of the people really are the Mockingbird assets. It really is the brainwashers. It really is the people who are manipulating Americans on a daily basis, right? And so what I find funny, the one that really stuck out to me after all of this, and I think it's, again, another great thing about RFK's candidacy. Remember, one of the great things about RFK is he's an actual royal, right? And Americans never really got why you want royals. They never really understood, right? Royals do not need to sell out for a buck, right? They come from a different planet, right? They don't need a buck. They don't need this guy's money and that guy's money. That's when people said, Bobby Kennedy will fall into line in a minute because he wants Democrat patronage. No, he doesn't. He's not a typical Democrat guy who wants a fancy job. Now, one of the things he did yesterday for publicity, and I don't even think Vivek can do it, but seeing these old people arguing about who gets to throw who in jail when they win the presidency, and then you see what Bobby Kennedy did yesterday. You know what he did? He went to a cliff on a lake and did a backflip off the cliff into the lake in order to raise money, right? As like a publicity stunt, but it's great. He's definitely not, although almost 70, clearly a young, spirited fella who we love. So there you go. So I don't have too much time to go today. I need a little bit of a break between them, but let's see what we got here in the comments. It's a hit on Maui. It's a hit on Maui. Yeah, could be. The only cantilever is completely unacceptable. Yeah. Trump and Biden 2024 is the most entertaining. Who doesn't want to see this race? It'll be a new space race. It's the race to see who drops from space. That's what it'll be. If the aliens actually come to visit, I'm sure they said this place is a clown show. Let's get the fuck out of here. Yeah, no kidding. Nothing like coffee and next level Bitcoin conversation. Thanks, Joe. Did you not see the New York Jets have Ukrainian flag on their helmets? Oh no, let's go Team BTC. Oh my God, what the hell? I didn't see that. Yeah, the Jets are a real joke, Todd. I don't watch too much football. A little bit of baseball, a little bit of hockey here and there. That's about it for me. Pump Stream, I like Canadian football. I'm a Canadian football fan. Pump Stream, indeed. Where I went to college is both of my colleges in Canada. In Waterloo, Ontario, they're big football fans, and it's a pretty good college football experience compared to the rest of Canada. Our stadium at Waterloo was probably only like 10,000 people, so it's like a high school United States size. But our stadium in Quebec City, which is the highest, most attended, most American football experience you can get, it's like a 20,000 person stadium, but always sold out, and like jet flyovers before the game and all that kind of stuff. So there's not a lot of that experience in Canada, but I happen to go to two of the best for the college football experience. And so indeed, I love Canadian football. 3 downs. That's the difference. 3 downs, not 4, 3. So a lot more crazy running and gunning and all that kind of stuff. Karina, I love RFK doing backflips. Isn't it cool? Honestly, it's amazing, right? One of the things that feel bad for Rogers, he went for money and now he'll finish his career on a joke team. Yeah, no kidding, man. Yeah. Well, but I don't even think he'll be able to play. I think he tore his Achilles, didn't he? That's what I saw. I think his Achilles is gone. So anyway, yeah, what I like about the backflips is that on a day where it's literally arguing about criminal influence around the addresses of either presidential candidate, with the fallout being whoever's on the wrong side of this is likely going to die, all right, like executed. A guy doing a backflip is great. Check out Musk X and see the clip about vaccine. Yeah, that one's been around for a while, bud. Yeah, I love that one. Yeah, it's a 90% effect. It's 80. It's just really great. All right, team. That's all I got for today. I shall see you tomorrow. Come to the 9 a.m. Eastern Time Spaces. That's coming up in 15 minutes. I'll be there with Svetsky. I'll be there with Aaron Van Weerdum. I'll be there with, I think, a few other folks from the Bitcoin Magazine team. Craig, I think, will be there. But we'll be a good gang, and we're going to be setting up our show in Amsterdam in under 2 weeks. Under 2 weeks now. I guess it starts 2 weeks tomorrow. It's a Thursday, Friday situation. All right, team. Peace.